A very warm welcome to fostering inclusive and effective financial services in the digital era, bridging the gap with technology and people-centric leadership. I am Veronica Christie, the moderator for this session, and I'm very excited to be your host today. In a rapidly evolving financial landscape, we find ourselves at the intersection of technology and human-centric leadership with a critical mission: to bridge the gap and ensure inclusive financial services delivered with a great experience for the customers as well as the employees. Our focus for today will be to speak about bridging the gender divide for women in technology and finance. Please allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists for this session. We will start with Sudha Kargi. She is an SVP at Zions Bank Corporation, a versatile leader with 15 years of banking experience across roles like project management, fraud prevention, and strategic partnerships. With a background in aerospace, IT, and banking, she excels at strategy execution, efficiency, and relationship building. Sudha is a visionary strategist, holds master's degrees in accounting and banking, but her accomplishments do not stop there. Beyond her banking prowess, she directs a dance school, spreading the joy through movement, and she's very successful at it. Next, Allison Seagraves is an industry expert with an MBA from Harvard Business School and over 30 years of experience. She's a renowned board advisor at Anaptyss. Her career is defined by advisory excellence, global influence, and empowering women through data, technology, and leadership. She's earned numerous awards, including Top 100 Global Data and Analytics Innovators and Marquis Who's Who Lifetime Achievement. But Allison is more than her resume. Her diverse interests extend to beekeeping and forest stewardship, embodied in her Apply Serendipity ethos via Allison Seagraves. You should look her up. Last but not least, Jagriti Kumar. She is the Chief Financial Officer at NLB Services, a key player in the organization's strategic growth, managing M&A pursuits, expansion into new line of business, and international compliance. Recognized for her exceptional contributions, she's won prestigious awards such as the Gold and Silver Globee. Jagriti accomplishments extend beyond finance, as she's been honored as a women trailblazer in finance by BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As you can see, our speakers embody the spirit of today's discussion, combining experience, innovation, and commitment to driving positive change in the financial services sector. As we embark in this enlightening journey, remember that technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, blockchain, and others are not just tools. They are the vehicles propelling us to a where inclusivity, resilience, and people-centric leadership will prevail. Throughout the webinar, we'll explore potential strategies, real-world approaches, and actionable takeaways for you to implement in your organizations. One quick housekeeping item as we start this session. Please use the chat option to submit your questions so that we can address them as the conversation goes or perhaps at the end of the session. So let's dive in and explore how we can collectively bridge the gap with technology and people-centric leadership to create a more inclusive and effective financial services industry. So, Allison, how can the discipline of data and analytics increase the reach of financial products and services across the social strata to support inclusion?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of good to level set and talk about what do we mean by financial inclusion. So let me just start with kind of what I think is a basic definition, that financial inclusion is really about ensuring that financial products and services are available to both people and businesses, small and large, at a reasonable cost on a sustainable basis. And actually, it's very interesting if you actually Google the World Bank's Sustainable Development Goals, you will see that many of the goals are specifically tied to financial inclusion and bringing more people into the financial system. So it's a really, really interesting and important topic for growth, not only in the US, but growth and well-being, financial well-being worldwide. So super important topic. And why data? This is such a passion of mine, that data is so integrally tied to improving financial inclusion, because when you think about it, financial products and services are really data products. What are we in the business of? We're in the business of making products from data, essentially. So I think the real opportunity to innovate in this space is to build new products and services. And I'm going to give you a few examples of things that are actually happening in this space and how we're bringing more people into the financial system through the use of data to promote financial inclusion. So I'm going to start on the credit side. So, many people and businesses, particularly small businesses, are really excluded from accessing credit. And we hear this in the news. In the US, for example, it's very getting harder and harder for people to buy a house. For example, small businesses are responsible for almost half of the US gross domestic product. And when the Federal Reserve actually surveyed small businesses, more than half of small businesses said that they don't have access to the credit they need to support their working capital and their investments for growth. So just think about the fact that credit is actually the lack of access to credit can be holding people back, can be holding companies back from growth and personal and company well-being and economic well-being for our country and for the world. So one interesting example in the credit space is that, I think we're all familiar with how we have credit scoring models that have been around for, I think it's something like 50 years. And they really, they're very incomplete. They're somewhat arbitrary. I mean, when you think about it, they were constructed decades ago, and they leave out some important information that, in a sense, kind of arbitrarily excludes people and small businesses and companies from being able to access credit just by the way something is scored. So what I think is really interesting is there's some innovative companies working both in the consumer space and the small business space to say, hey, if we look at more data points, we can get more comfortable that there are more people and there are more small businesses that we feel comfortable extending credit to if we knew more about those people and incorporated that data into our decision making. So this is a big area of innovation to promote financial inclusion and extend credit. So if you Google this topic, you'll see some of the interesting companies doing great work in that space. So that's one aspect of financial inclusion, is expanding access to credit. Another is just bringing more people into the banking and financial system. Banks are doing this and FinTechs are doing this by offering much lower barriers to entry to be able to open a deposit account or a checking account. We have FinTechs that are offering no fee accounts, no minimum balances accounts, and really lowering barriers to allow more and more people to get into the financial system. We're really moving away from a model in financial services where fees were more punitive into an era like that's going away. That's being regulated away, and it's being innovated away. And the model is really moving toward, how do we help consumers? How do we help businesses manage their financial health better? So that's another area, is just making it easier to have a digital wallet, a digital bank account that doesn't charge you fees. And I think just another interesting example of innovation, I think we hear, certainly in the US, but this would be a global phenomenon, that we have people living from paycheck to paycheck. And many of these people have been using very expensive credit, payday lenders, and really not having sustainable cash flow or stable incomes as a result of paying lots of fees to be able to manage like a sudden unexpected expense. So I was reading about some interesting fintechs that are solving this problem by advancing money for hours that have already been worked in that gap between when you finished your work and you get your paycheck, to promote more income stability and to promote better cash flows. So these are just some ways that innovative companies are really using data to improve financial health and well-being for more people, more businesses, to bring them into the financial system. And I think it's really exciting. It helps promote growth, and it helps promote economic well-being for more people around the country and around the world.
Thank you, Allison. That's a great way to set the stage for all of this, and understanding globally how things are changing. Not just in our backyard. So thank you for that, Jagriti. Amid the modernization wave, what pragmatic approaches banks and financial institutions alike can consider for effectively adopting financial technologies or FinTech, as the ones that Allison described?
Sorry about that, was still on mute. Again. So in my view, it kind of begins with having, an overarching strategy as to how to weave technology into people, processes, and practices within the organization. Of course, there are some like rudimentary elements that you need to accomplish that, whether that's technological expertise, understanding of the business knowledge, business that banking and financial services sector deals with, compliances, cross collaboration between the teams to accomplish the vision that the institution has for itself. So I think that's kind of like a if you will, a playbook that you need to have in place to accomplish that. But just stepping back and thinking of like how to make it a little bit more tangible for people. There was, we helped a lending institution. I'm going to share an example here. We helped a lending institution that was facing challenges around efficiency and quality with their manual loan origination process. The reporting was fragmented, the timelines were extended. So we partnered with them and developed like an RPA tool to extract and validate the data from there, and also deployed a dashboard which not only created the profile for them, gave them analysis and other useful metrics that could be used. So in this case, it's the business had already identified the need, but they didn't have the technical know-how and the domain knowledge. So they partnered with someone, that was us in this case, with knowledge of their business, having the expertise from a technological and implementation perspective to make it a success. And I think they saw somewhere around like 20% increase in efficiency along their process and shorter time for it. So that could be like one example of where you make this tangible for businesses and they can see an increase in their operational efficiency if that's the objective. So yeah, back over to you, Veronica.
Thank you, Jagriti. I feel like we are entering an era where if you can dream it, somebody will be able to build it, which is, very interesting. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you for that. Sudham, how has been your experience at Zions Corporation in leveraging digital solutions to deliver services that are inclusive and customer-centric?
That's a great question, Veronica. Let me start introducing who we are. Zions Bank Corporation is the parent company headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have subsidiaries who operate in 11 western states, to name a few: Arizona, California, Colorado, Texas, right? And our annual revenue is close to 3 billion and around 90 billion in the total assets we have. At Zions, we recently implemented a core banking system for our commercial and consumer loan processes, and we are working on implementing the deposits module on that. The reason is we wanted to centralize and standardize our systems and applications and enable real-time updates. At Zions, we serve around 4 generations, starting
Wow.
from baby boomers all the way to Gen Zs. Now you can understand vast different levels of comforts with the technology, right? So it is imperative that any digital services we adapt are intuitive and user friendly. These services are offered in person and through a mobile application, allowing customers to pursue their preferred channels.
Okay. Thank you, Sudan. It's good to understand, the magnitude of the corporation that you're in and how technology can assist, to touch all of the different generations. That's very important to,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
to understand. Okay. Allison, what can organizations do to enable a data-driven culture, mindset, or approach to enhance the experience for customers and employees?
So I think first we have to start with the business strategy before we think of what we do with data, and really understand what's important to our customers and what's important to our employees. And then we can get into how will data help enable those business and employee strategies. So, think about what's the problem we're trying to solve. So one area that I think applies probably to most companies, when you think about the environment, the economic environment we're in right now, it's not that easy to get new customers. So one of the first places I would suggest companies look is, how do you make sure that your existing customers are satisfied, are having a good experience, and stay with you? So I think starting to look at what might make a customer leave is a great way to use data, because you're able to look, financial institutions can look at all of the transactions and see a customer who might be sending funds to another organization. Well, hey, that's a clue that that customer could be at risk and needs some outreach. So that's a way to kind of start. It's a bit in reactive mode to try to retain that customer, but then you can build from reactive mode to proactive mode and really start to understand through transaction data, for example, what's going on with your customers, what might be happening in their lives, what products and services might be helpful to them given what's happening in their transactions. So using data and analytics to really understand the customer journey in a deep and personalized way, to be able to offer very relevant, targeted solutions to these customers, and not say, hey, everybody, how about a home equity loan? But look at an individual's circumstances and be able to offer something up in the moment that could be relevant to that customer. So I think that's really important. Other ways the data can be used is to protect customers, to protect them from fraud. I think customers certainly appreciate the kinds of alerts that are very specific and targeted to potential situations where it really might be fraud, and getting that right is super important. And I think, again, I mentioned this, I think, in my first answer, which is really to shift the mindset to financial wellness. And I think it's really interesting to look at the consumer electronics world. Actually, I was at the Consumer Electronics Show last year. I'm going to be there again this year, moderating a panel on banking. That we have so much to learn from, Apple Watches and Fitbits. And when you think of all the consumer technologies that people are using to manage their physical well-being, their personal health, their mental well-being. How can banks, we have all of this transaction data and fintechs, we have all this information. We should be able to use that to really help customers manage their financial wellness, just the way people are managing their physical and mental well-being. So I think that's the big opportunity for banks and fintechs, is to use data to help customers be to improve their financial well-being. And really the same is true on the employee, from an employee experience. How can you use engagement data? How can you look at workforce optimization? How can you make sure that people are don't have too much work to do, or have the right amount of work to do, or are working on things that are important? So the same kind of principles can be applied to employee well-being.
Thank you, Allison. I think as you were describing, the first part of your answer, I think about, some statistics I remember reading in regards to how much it costs to attract a customer and how much it costs to retain a customer. So if we can utilize data to retain all those customers that we have already invested in, technology can help us do that. Very interesting. Many ideas, just come to mind. Thank you for that. So, Jagriti, as digital technologies continue to find their way into the banking and financial services domain, what can institutions do to drive effective adoption and build proficiency for customer outcomes and employee experience?
Thank you for the question. It's definitely an interesting one. I will start from the employee perspective, and when I think of it, I think of it twofold. One is like, what is evaluating what is the current situation, what are the tools and technology that the employees are engaged in, what is it that they have access to, and are we missing something, So, and then how is that kind of built into your strategy from a business perspective, from an HR perspective? So that would be the one piece of it. And the next piece, and I think this is where a lot of focus and attention has been in the past, and definitely will continue to be in the future, given how rapidly the technology is evolving, is what are the opportunities and access points we are providing to our employees to upskill and reskill. And this is not just like educationally, but in terms of projects that they're being deployed on and so forth. So I think that is going to become extremely critical going forward, to make sure that we have a flexible workforce which is able to not only scale with the business, but also kind of like be able to serve the plethora of goals that are being added, whether it's from a technological perspective or from customer perspective. And I'll move on to that next. So I think I honestly think it's like a little bit more exciting and challenging time being a customer, because your goals or what you now need in a financial institution or partner is changing. So, like if I look back, it was like, okay, can I trust this institution was one of the primary things that you would evaluate it. So like, trust and security was probably prime goal. But now, as Sudha mentioned, she's dealing with 4 generations of, population. Now it's not just about trust and security. It's like, how do I make my products accessible across those generations in the platforms that they want, so that they're having the experience that they want to experience in a financial institution. So how can we deploy technology and which is like a whole gamut of words, whether you talk about like Internet of Things or artificial intelligence and machine learning and so on and so forth, but how can we use them intuitively, intelligently, to create that unique experience that people are looking for? I think that's probably going to be the key and the challenge that will need to be solved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. I think of in the past, you would have to focus on what kind of customer you were looking for, and now with technology we can have them all. We can have campaigns, we can have things that that attract all different customers, on the different sections. So yeah, technology definitely is working mostly for us in this sector. Before I move on to the next question, I want to just remind everyone, since our group is rather large, to put any questions that you would like to address to the panel in the QA option on the chat. We will try to get to as many questions as possible at the end of this discussion, and hopefully, some of them will be answered before we get there. But we'll continue. Sudan, amid the genetic solutions and the rhetoric around digital transformation, what is your take on enabling a realistic change that reconciles the company culture, the human experience, and social impact?
From my viewpoint, Veronica, as we transition to more digital era, it is important to maintain the human interactions and the traditional customer experience, right? Banking these days is becoming more of a platform than the traditional brick and mortar facilities, right? While serving the customer, we have to keep in mind the different generations, how they access the banking. We have some customers who still visit our branches to deposit a check or withdraw cash. We also have some Gen Z customers who we never have seen it. We have seen them only online. They use the cell phones for all their transactions. So we should have a balance, the striking right balance to make sure the customers who come to the branches, we provide them the same service that we used to do decades ago, versus the customers, who goes to Amazon or other online services, just two clicks, instant gratification, right? They get that instant. Similarly, the banking should also have the technological platform to enable and serve those kind of customers. So to cater our customers who belong to the different generations, we opted a phased approach implementation to guide them through the transformation journey. So we have implemented a core banking platform through the TCS banks to make sure we are able to serve the different generations of our customers. Our CEO, Harris Simmons, the vision is to maintain the local brand and identity in our region. Despite being a large bank corp, we try to maintain the local regional bank feel for our customers. With regards to the social impact, I think when digitizing our customer, we need to consider the digital divide and the lack of access to technology in certain areas. So our services are made accessible regardless of the social economic status and access to the technology.
Thank you, Sudan. It's interesting, to think that, in the past, when you think about the traditional banking, 30 years ago, it was very much into your services were geared towards how much money you had in the bank. And now we're able to really, offer, this sea of services regardless of how much is it coming into the bank, and just make it more attractive for everyone to join.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To Jagrudi's point, it's definitely challenging, understanding where it is going and updating it constantly, right? It's not like one and done. It's not going to end for science after we implement. I'm sure there is something more coming up. So, Alison, all the points on the data we leverage, we wish we could have more access and more analytics tool to slice and dice and see the raw data into more meaningful information. That's where the banking is heading towards.
Yeah. I think about sometimes of, when do we have too many options? When do we reach the point to where we have too much data, to where we have so much to ingest? We are almost a little paralyzed on making that next decision just because there's so much input. But
actually, I would comment on that point. I think that is a real that's a real sticking point in this field. Is that I think I'm a big proponent of really, and I think I said it, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Start with a particular problem, which is why I really just teed up the one about retaining customers, because that's a fairly universal challenge. And just thinking about what's the subset of data that would be important to our organization to be able to really move the needle on that particular opportunity. And I think that you know, in the development of the big data era, now the AI era, there's been way too much focus on let's just like ingest all the data instead of starting with what's the opportunity and what are the data assets that we need to be able to address that opportunity. So I don't say start small in a formulaic way or in a cliche kind of way, but more in a way to demonstrate that you can build the muscles to use data to actually cause a meaningful impact on a business on the bottom line, and then extend from there. So this can get so overwhelming so fast, and staying focused is really hard, but I think it's the way to succeed and to be able to scale.
Thank you for that. We actually have one question from the Q&A before we move on to the next session of this discussion. The question is, what role of generative AI will be playing in the financial market, and how will impact the current scenario we are currently in? Who would like to take that question? Allison?
Yes, well, certainly, you know, this is the disruptive technology of our lifetime. I think I will not be a prognosticator on what the actual impacts will be, because I think we can all just kind of make up our own scenarios, other than to say that, you know, this is, as Sam Altman called it, this is a Gutenberg moment. So what exactly does that mean? I think that what it means is that companies, people, citizens really need to understand what are these technologies capable of? How can we use them to solve problems in our companies? How might we as citizens want to make sure that we're engaged in the public square and understanding how we may want to regulate the use of these technologies? So I think it's really on all of us to get smart, to be aware of what's happening, to be engaged. It's clearly there's going to be major changes in the way products and services are delivered. I mean, just think of healthcare, where there's a lot of this technology has been implemented. You know, there are ways that this may, you know, really revolutionize medicine. Well, it will probably revolutionize, you know, how we do banking, how we manage wealth. It's going to change the composition of the workforce. Lots of jobs are likely to be automated. Over what time horizon? Who's to say? But it's clearly a disruptive technology which has much potential for good, and much potential that I think many people have questions about it, and rightly so. So, you know, I think it's imperative that that organizations really understand and start testing it and using it in specific cases. And again, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Let's not solve for everything, but let's use some models that could solve a targeted problem. Let's learn from that and see where we can scale. So it's going to have a huge impact. How fast and how big? That's kind of the open question, I think.
Still to be seen. Okay. We had one more question, and I think perhaps this is more Sudha's expertise. With improved financing inclusivity, how can financial institutions balance the financial risk side of the coin? Are alerts enough? I'm assuming that this person is talking about, you know, as we are taking in more diverse type of customers, you know, it also invites some risk. So how do we balance that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. First of all, balancing the risk and the customer service is a huge challenge every banks is facing today. That's why, like Jagadi's point, a lot of the risk tools, right, help us, though we have a lot of the customers these days are opening up online banking accounts. We do want to serve them and be technologically enabled to serve those kind of Gen Z customers who doesn't want to come into the bank and, do the transactions. So assessing all of the risk factors upfront and enabling the bankers to accept a customer's account or the red flags per se, making sure we are able to get all their background checks completed and then see upfront, because it's a huge risk for bank even taking one customer who doesn't fit our profile, and later on not only trying to retain but also making sure that doesn't impact across the different channels. So one is assessing the risk and also enabling all the tools we have in place to serve them in a timely manner.
Thank you, Sudha. But very true. We need to understand the full customer journey, from the beginning when you take in the customer, all the way through, whatever reporting it needs to be done. So it is important to, when you talk about those red flags there, it is important to keep that balance. Jagriti, do you have a perspective, an opinion, from the customer perspective?
I guess like actually I'll tag on to what Sudha was mentioning in terms of risk evaluation. And I think this is not only like at the starting point when the customer is kind of engaged and onboarded, but also monitoring that risk throughout their life cycle, right? Because like life happens and things change. So it's never like a simple straight line. So how do we, what, I guess from a technological and from a data vantage point, like what can be utilized to monitor that risk on a continual basis? I think from like from a customer perspective, if I'm a customer of a bank, it's, like I'm looking at risk, the alerts are extremely helpful. I know now there is like, you can get automated pins sent to your phone if you needed like extra layer of security, whether in terms of accessing and so forth. And also a lot of this technology is becoming less expensive. I remember the time when we used to have like those fobs that you needed to, like get on to sign in. And, if you lost one of those, oh my God, you didn't want to be the person on that list. So, but now, as a benefit of technology, it's something that you can do from your phone. Are there additional risks in this? Yes, but that's kind of like the balance that you have to play off between what is the customer need and how do, the banks and, other technological partners working with the bank help them assess and manage that risk.
Yeah, good old days, Jagriti, with regards to the RSA tokens, right? We used to carry those much closer to than the car keys or any other belongings.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely, so I agree with that.
All right. Let me get back to our questions. Allison, as an industry veteran with over 3 decades of experience, what are your thoughts on increasing the representation of women in tech and financial services, and potential ways to address issues such as gender pay gap and career progression?
Well, of course, this is a topic that I have been interested in for decades. And I'll just throw out, just to set some context. So, across financial services, which includes things like banks and includes investment banks, different kinds of, FinTechs, women represent, it's probably about half of the employees in the financial services sector. Now, I've worked at companies where actually I think women were more than 50%. There might be some subsectors that it's less, but just think of the number of women. I think if you look around your own companies, you'll see that we have lots and lots of women in the financial services industry, which is terrific. But when you look at the senior leadership in financial services, it's hovered around 25%. Now, I will say that in my long career, 25% is a big number compared to what it was when I started out. I don't even know what the stats were, but there were very few women in positions of senior leadership. But nevertheless, we're still only at 25%. And I just like to say that, like, women, I'm speaking in the US context here, women really power the economy. We actually control 85% of consumer discretionary spend. Some people may realize it, some people may not realize it, but like, women are kind of the engines of the economy. And we're soon to be, and I think it depends on whether you count small businesses or small business ownership or just women employed in other companies. We're at least 50%, potentially higher, in terms of like women being the majority in the workplace or the emerging majority. And I think it's common knowledge at this point that women are earning a greater proportion of college degrees. So we really have to recognize, with women playing this important a role in the economy, does it even make any sort of common sense that the percentage of leadership in the financial front lines is maybe 25% women when we're controlling 85% of the economy? So I really think that we've got to reconcile that and bring more women into positions of leadership. To me, this is just obvious. It's common sense. It's the right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do. So I have some strategies that I think companies need to adopt, and then specific things that I tell people that I talk to or mentor or sponsor in this space. So I think the companies really need to be much more intentional about recruiting practices, retention practices, and promotion practices. I was reading that there's a kind of a stat that when let's say women were to achieve like 30% of become 30% of leadership, that's really almost like a tipping point where, instead of being the minorities at the table, the one woman in the room, which I have been year after year after year, when you get to 30%, like, that's a sizable number. And when you think, if we're at 25%, that should not be so unachievable. I'd like to be optimistic that that's a point we could get to in the next couple of years. And that means companies have to be much more deliberate about hiring women, recognizing the women who are on their teams today, ensuring that they are getting high visibility assignments, sponsoring, promoting, taking more, I'll put risk in quotes on women, as has historically been done for men. I think those of us who have been in the workforce for a number of years can all recall situations where companies will take a chance on somebody that may be, a more traditional candidate in the sense, and a woman has to meet every requirement, and women think they need to meet every requirement. So that has to change. And I think if it does, and we get to that 30%, that will be, I think that's a tipping point. Then there's this concept of the multiplier effect. And I actually was just reading about this in the past few days, and I think it's really interesting that when there's a woman in the C-suite, that she has a multiplier effect of naturally bringing 3 more women into senior leadership. So when you take this idea of the multiplier effect and you think of extending that across your company, just think of the impact that can have. So I think that's really important. That's one reason it's important. We're not talking about tokens. We're talking about moving numbers of women and other underrepresented groups into positions of leadership. And I think, in my career, I've, sometimes I've had mentors, sometimes I've had sponsors, but, they, in my early days especially, they were hard to find. So those are all ways companies can support women and can get more women into positions of leadership, as should be the case given our role in the economy. Now, to women specifically, some of the things in the conversations I have is that I think we need to take a strong role in managing our careers, making sure that we're working on those critical projects that are going to really drive the company forward. I know in my career, I've done a lot of unpromotable work. We're given a lot of unpromotable work. A lot of stuff is, and I can see there's some recognition here. I don't know, anybody out there that has felt like they've been assigned unpromotable work, I think that we need to kind of push back on that and say, hey, I don't know that this work even needs to be done. And oh, by the way, here's some other people that might be able to do that. So I think it's taking more of a stand, owning your career more, making sure you're working on things that are most important to the company, and saying no to the stuff that's not a difference maker. So I think women have been a bit socialized. I kind of hate to use that word, to think that working harder, working more, we will be recognized and we will be promoted by virtue of the fact that we're knocking ourselves out. And wrong. That's totally wrong. I think we need to do less, do it better, promote it more, and give ourselves a break. We have borne the weight of the world, the weight of the pandemic. It is time that we free ourselves to focus on those things that are important, take care of ourselves, and put ourselves in a position to be able to assume the leadership roles if that's what we want to do. And then I also would say to cultivate sponsors and mentors. I do whole talks on this topic about developing a personal board of advisors. I think that's important. And then finally, certainly something I'm committed to doing at this stage of my career is really focusing on bringing other women up. We have got to support each other. We are not at odds with each other. It can seem like that because we are the minorities in the room, but we need to help each other rise. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Allison, for your passion. And we can tell that you're passionate on this topic, and you have done well over the years. But let me move over to Jagriti. The gender pay gap is a substantive concern from the standpoint of equitable workplaces. As senior executive and chief financial officer, how did you participate? How did you anticipate the role of factors such as technology, employee skilling, the emerging workplace policy, and bridging the gap for women employees?
Thank you for the question, Veronica. So when I think of technology, employee skilling, and the emerging workplace policies, I feel these are all enablers that will, if anything, help level the platform and make it more accessible, kind of be the bridge, kind of be the link, bridging the gap here. So, and when I think of like almost like institutional paradigms that I can kind of see where some of these enablers need to be layered, like I would say they're like policies and practices within the organization. So how are, what is it that we are communicating in terms of what are our policies around it? And then the second piece, which I know Allison spoke to about, is access and opportunity. As somebody, as an individual, am I asking for those opportunities? And then as an institution, are we making those opportunities available? How are we monitoring that we're making those opportunities available? That I think is the more important part. Because if you're not monitoring something, we can be aware that it's an issue. So kind of goes back to like using technology and data, but how are we using our performance performance system to enable or to be able to give us access to this information? And then last but not the least, I would say the third paradigm in my mind is culture and community. So, and this is both within the organization and outside, so what kind of culture is the institution you're working in? What are some of the things that you observe? It's like, these are things that are not kind of put on the wall, but are more something that you intuitively gaze, right? So that I feel that is important. And then from a community perspective, I think it's twofold. Like one is me, like as an individual, am I seeking the right mentors and advocates for myself that can help me, get my vision for my career path, help me coach through that. And the other piece, which I know Allison also spoke about, is just kind of bringing the community of women together. I feel there's great power in that. Like, as an example that Allison shared, that if there is a one C-level executive, she's able to bring in 3 more women. So you can just kind of see, the power of community and connection in that. So I think that is something, maybe, I don't know if it needs to be formalized, but I think you can probably, as a woman, just take initiative in creating some of those. These can be inside or outside, but I think those are the 3 paradigms that can be, I think of where we can use some of the technology. But overall, I feel like all of these aspects, if anything, will just help level the play field for women.
Great, great. Thank you for that. As you were speaking, you mentioned something about data, to create awareness, and all I can think of is putting it on a T-shirt. Data for awareness. It's just to get everybody to think about that. When they're making decisions. Thank you, Jagriti. So Sudan, while technology can drive inclusion across the societal strata, um, its role is yet to be fully be seen from the standpoint of women empowerment. As a senior leader yourself in in your industry and organization, how do you see technology's role in uplifting and supporting women leaders?
That's an awesome question, Veronica. See, the proof is in the pudding, right? We all been through the pandemic, which has enabled overnight, we were able to lift and shift, going into the office, working remotely. So what I would say, technology has definitely enabled working remotely and hybrid model, which helps women to juggle multiple priorities and strike a balance, right? Through technology, it is becoming easier for women to access education from anywhere, because I'm a huge proponent of anything can be achieved with some confidence and through the proper education system. Before, it used to be getting yourself enrolled into colleges or some centers where you have to go in person, but these days with the technological advancements, we can do it sitting in the office, sitting at home,
Mhm.
and definitely that has enabled find more jobs and also start businesses while breaking down the traditional gender roles and stereotypes. A good example, couple of my team members who were SMEs in our processes after the maternity leave, they were able to come back just because we had the hybrid model enabled for them to continue the work and have a balance, or else it's 1.5 hours commute for them every day one way. So they had to choose what is best for them, and they were going to quit their job. But due to the hybrid model, we were able to allow them to work from home couple of the days and be part of the days when we have team meetings and stuff. So for sure, I would say it's great to have that technological and advancements in that space. Apart from that, Jagriti, you talked about how does the organization enable, right? At Science, we have several internship programs focusing on early talent development, starting from high schools and
Mhm.
undergrad and grad school who are in STEM and non-STEM programs. We also offer mentorship programs within the organizations, like on an annual basis. There are some volunteers who would be willing to mentor, and the matches are being made, the mentees identify what areas they want to improve and have the mentors pair with them on throughout the year basis. You work with them, helping them achieve their goals, introduce them to executive leadership, have them present and be part of the table. So that's something science heavily focuses on, the mentorship program. So those are the things, for sure. I think that helps the women leaders move up.
Okay, thank you. I've spent some time with you at Science, and I have to say that seeing you, uh, go moving around throughout your teams, I can see how you are a very charismatic leader,
Thank
and I'm
you.
sure there are many women in your industry will be happy to have you as a mentor. I've seen how you are able to get push things through. So it's great to see that you're joining on some of these talks, to show people that it is possible. All the possibilities that are out there in our own institutions. We just have to find them and make good use of them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so this is towards the end of a conversation. We have a few minutes, so I'm going to read a couple of questions from the Q&A. There seems to be quite a few. Let's see. This question is for Sudan. It says, is it a generational training approach which involves a distinction given the generations banking at science? Technology obviously has stages of adoption. Any thoughts on how to best encourage adoption, on how to deploy nuanced learning strategy customized to each generation?
Sure, I will try my best to answer this question. So, what we do at Science is, since I mentioned we have 4 different generations we serve. One of them is tech savvy. Probably they could teach us, right? What they want and what are the requirements in the banking platform for them. And the other generations, whom we have been serving them in the traditional manner, coming into the banks. And I've been like on the front line for a few of my years. I have some customers who would walk in to cash the paycheck, have a conversation. How is it going? What are the products we offer? And we had a Friday cookie day, because that's the every other week they would come and cash, and we want to make sure we engage with them, understand. That's when we were also able to bring in new customers, right? Some of the senior customers, they want their kids and their grandkids to bank with the same bank they've been, because it's the trust and the relationship you have built with those customers. So that was a great avenue to connect with them and understand. And they would talk about, my grandkid is going to the college. Then we would say, hey, there is some product that we could offer. He could have a debit card and all that, the cross selling and all that stuff. So that was a great way. At the same time, now we are enabling those customers. So not only to come in, we are not discouraging them, but also enabling them. When they come in, we do train them options with iPads in the branches. If you have a laptop at home or if you have an iPad, everybody has it. It's just the convenience for them to get into that and log in. So we do coach them with the personal bankers when they walk in, how they can log in and keep some secured password, and how to maintain, like the security versus accessing it online at their convenience. So those kind of training sessions are also offered in the branches to enable our customers who could move into those, online platform.
Great. Thank you. Those are things that everyone can, put into play, tomorrow. It's those are great things to do. All right. So we are almost running out of time. So before we end, I want to thank our esteemed panelists for sharing their wisdom and knowledge so generously with all of us. We are grateful for this insightful session. I hope their journey and wisdom have left you inspired. I know I am. Many, many things, to think about. As we conclude this session, I encourage everyone to think about all of the possibilities that you have in front of you. As we heard from all of our panelists, we need to create opportunities for ourselves, make sure that we are putting ourselves in the front to ensure that we are seen, and if we are seen, to bring other women with us to ensure that the effect that Allison talked about, the multiplier effect, actually takes hold. With that, I thank you all for joining us.